Hello, my dear friends. Mike Shreeve here, founder and head troublemaker of the No Pants Project. You're listening to episode 55 of the No Pants Show. Today, I want to talk about why I still freelance. Now, who cares, right? It's just me. I'm only telling you this story because I want to share with you what the freelancing income stream can look like and can become. I want to give you sort of the preview of your life in 10 years if you so choose for it to be this way. I also want to demonstrate why freelancing is such a good income stream so that when you're in the middle of it, you can say, okay, well, because oftentimes shiny object, right? Well, maybe I'll go start a Shopify store, or maybe I'll go sell my art on Etsy, or maybe I'll go do this, or maybe I'll go do that. And you can sometimes forget when you're in the middle of it how good you have it as a freelancer. Now, I often get asked why I still freelance because I have two other income streams that you may or may not know about. One, I self-publish fiction and I do fairly well at it. It's something I'm learning and I'm growing, but I've been fortunate enough. I've been self-publishing since 2012. The time of this recording is 2019, so we're coming up on I think it'll be January of 2020 should be 7 years or something like that. I can't remember how it works, but it's like 7 or 8 years I've been doing this, okay? So it didn't happen overnight. It's taken a long time, a lot of hard work. But I do decently well. I could just live off of my fiction income and be perfectly happy and would be amazing and would still be living in the neighborhoods where doctors live. Okay. That's about all that you need to know about that. The No Pants Project is a coaching business where I and a team of coaches help people to start their own freelancing business and to grow and scale it to six figures. Okay, that's what the No Pants Project is. I started that business 2 years ago after I had been a freelancer for I think 8 or 9 years at that point. I think I'm coming up on 11 years now as a freelancer. And I started this one about 2 years ago, finally wanting to give back and all that kind of good stuff. And that business is a 7-figure per year business in revenue, right? So we generate 7 figures, meaning 7 figures being $1 million or more every year in sales from that business. And now that particular business, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, has tons of expenses and we give away a lot for charity. So as an income stream, everybody always says, somebody said on one of those, somebody said online about me that I only made my money from teaching people how to be a freelancer instead of being a freelancer. And I had to laugh my brains out because I don't make that much money from No Pants Project at all. It's not because of the way that it's structured. And even more now as I begin to hire more and more people and move myself out of the day-to-day operations, there's an issue of margins, which we'll talk about here in a second. Where I've made the bulk of my money in my entire life has been as a freelancer. For 8 years, I made more than $250,000 a year for 8 of the 10 or 11 years that I've been doing it. So that has been a very solid foundational piece of how I've been able to do these other things. I funded my fiction with freelancing because, as you know, you may or may not know, when you self-publish fiction, Amazon only pays you 60 days after the day you make the sale. So if I make a sale in January, I don't get paid for it until March, which is a problem if you're spending money on advertising that you don't get that money back for 60, 90 days. So I used my freelancing cash income to pay for the ads for that business, which is why I've been able to grow it so quickly. Same with the No Pants Project. We went from 0 to $1 million within our first calendar year because I had cash from my freelancing business to put into Facebook ads to grow the business and to hire other people and to et cetera, et cetera. So at the core of my income streams, the foundation has always been freelancing. And even with these other income streams going, there's still 5 reasons why I still continue to this day to freelance. And I want to share them with you so again, you can understand the power of freelance and to give you an idea of how to use freelance, not just to pay your bills, but to do other things that you may want to do. First reason I continue to freelance to this day, and to be frank, will probably always be a freelancer, is because it's safe. Being a freelancer is unbelievably safe. It's very low risk. It costs nearly nothing to run as a business. Now, if you know anything about business, when you don't have a lot of expenses, you don't have a lot of risk. Here's what I mean by that. If I have 3 bad months of freelancing in a row, I don't have to lay anybody off. I don't have to lose my business office because I don't have a business office. I freelance from home, right? So there's no like ongoing expenses. So if I have a dry spell, as long as I personally budget my money, okay, we're fine. But there's another element of safety in freelancing beyond just the fact that you don't have ongoing expenses. It is the fact that I own every piece of that business. I own it. That is not true for the No Pants Project and or my self-publishing business. And let me give you a reason why. So many years ago, I thought about quitting everything and just doing self-publishing. But 80% of my sales that come from the self-publishing book sales, 80% comes from Amazon. Meaning, Amazon hosts my book, Amazon sells my book for me, and Amazon takes a portion of those sales. 80%. Now, that is an unbelievably high risk profile to put all of your eggs into that single basket. And you may say, I don't understand what you mean. What do you mean? How's that risky if Amazon is 80% of your sales? Many years ago, I made my part of my living. So it was earlier in my freelancing career. I was just learning how to write articles online. And I wrote a bunch of, I don't know if anyone remembers this. They were called Squidoo. I think Seth Godin started that company. But basically what I would do is I'd write these review articles on camping gear, like especially backpacking backpacks, and then I would send affiliate links to Amazon. And I would get commissions on whatever people bought on Amazon. That was that was a thing to do back in like 2010, 2011, or 2012. I can't even remember the exact year, but it's 10 years ago, basically. And I was making $2,000-$3,000 a month doing that. And at the time, that was like, I thought I was rich. It was super easy. I had some clients on the side. I think altogether combined, I was making like $7,000, $8,000 a month. And I thought I was, the richest man in the world. But then all of a sudden, Google decided they didn't like Squidoo pages. And all the traffic that I was getting from Squidoo, gone. Not gone over 60 days, not gone over 6 months. One day I woke up and that business was done. $3,000 a month, a majority of my income, goodbye, can't get it back. All the work that I had done, goodbye, can't get it back. And that experience taught me the importance of ownership of your business. So let me explain. If tomorrow Amazon decided for whatever reason they didn't like my books and they stripped them all, my self-publishing business is done. Because 80% of my sales come from Amazon, the other 20% isn't enough to sustain the cost of doing business. because I have an assistant. I have someone running ads for that business. I'm paying for ads. I have editing fees. I have book publishing fees, including cover design, the design inside the book, et cetera, et cetera. And that 20% of sales isn't sustainable enough. And to be frank, probably 20% of those sales come from the fact that I have visibility on Amazon from the 80% of sales. It's just that some people have a Nook instead of a Kindle, but they saw my book on Amazon and went and bought it for something else or some other device. And you may say, oh, Amazon would never do that. And I would tell you, they already have. They've already gone through those ups and downs. People's books have been taken down without warning, without notice. There was Kindle Unlimited 1, now there's Kindle Unlimited 2, two very different Kindle Unlimiteds, two very different ways of getting your book, and et cetera, et cetera. So they already have done that stuff. And I've already felt the flux of the income. Now you go to the No Pants Project. And you say, okay, well, I could see, Mike, how you would still do freelancing because you don't want to rely on that. Amazon could shut you down, then you'd be in trouble. I got kids, I got family. You know, I'm a grown-up now. I can't just like pretend to kind of make money whenever. I've got to make money consistently. And you say, well, okay, well, what about the No Pants Project? I don't own the No Pants Project either, because nearly 100% of our sales comes from the fact that we can advertise on Facebook. When you take Facebook away, we don't make a lot of sales. Certainly not enough to pay the very, very high payroll cost that we have in the No Pants Project. And the scary thing about Facebook is they can just decide to turn all of your ads off one day. And you may say, oh, they would never do that, Mike. Actually, for the No Pants, they already have. Back in September, we were running $3,000 a day in ad spend. Overnight, every single one of our ads, they said, nope. We had to go through this whole manual review process. It was a nightmare. We finally got it all back because it was just a misunderstanding. But there was like a big stretch of time where no ads were being run, no sales were happening, and I was still putting out that very expensive payroll. So lesson number one of why I love freelance is because I own it. Because there's nothing to own. If I want a new client, I send some email from my personal email. I don't even need an email list. Now, y'all know I use an email list for my business, but let's even take that away. Let's say all of a sudden the autoresponder company doesn't let me send emails anymore. I can still reach out, get clients, and have money coming in using a personal email. I can send people I know. I can tap into my network. I can call them on the phone. I can send them a text. I could send them an old-fashioned letter through the mail and still get a hold of people and turn them into clients. Because I own it. I own all of the moving parts of a freelancing business. I do not own all the parts of my fiction business. I do not own all the parts of No Pants Project. So, for those of you who are out there, number one, saying I make all my money from the No Pants Project, wait till we get to number two. But also number two is freelancing is about as safe of a business as you can develop. So if you're out there thinking, what business should I do? And you're on the fence of maybe I should drop ship, maybe I should do this, maybe I should start my own info product business, maybe I should. It's important for you to understand if safety and security and predictability and control is important to you, it doesn't really get any better than simply offering your services to someone else, because it transcends all platforms. It is platform independent. Number two, margin. When I receive a check or when an invoice is paid from a client, I get to keep 100% of that. 100% of it goes to me. When I receive $1 from the No Pants Project, I see 20 cents. So, the difference between getting to keep every dollar I make and only getting to keep 20 cents, and this is pre-tax, okay? I'm talking about pre-tax margins here. The No Pants Project, I get to see 20%. Now, that's because I have coaches, I have support staff, I have to pay for Facebook ads, I have to pay for someone to manage the Facebook ads, I have a tech person on our team, I have software up the wazoo to make sure all the pages work, everything that you guys see, I got to pay for this. There's a lot of stuff that I got to pay to run the No Pants Project in the way that I want to run it. Now, there are some people who they'll run a business like that and they'll see 50 cents for every dollar. But because I can't afford to keep the No Pants Project as my only job, because like a lot of coaches do only make their money by coaching, right? Like there are a lot of people who, and I personally have issues with that of like, if that's all you know how to do, then just teach coaches. Don't teach people that stuff you don't do anymore. But that's a whole side note. But because I do it that way, I only see 20 cents for every dollar. Now, you may say, but it's 20 cents a dollar, teams building it, it's all that good stuff. But there's an element of stress that comes with small margins. And it is, let's say you're getting 20 cents on every dollar. And then let's say for 3 months, for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, for 10 months, the business just doesn't do very well. That 20% margin shrinks to 10, to 5, to 1, to -5, to -10. This is the problem with margin. Is that it's great when it's great. When it's not great, it gives you gray hairs, right? And the same is true with my fiction business. Because again, I have costs that I have to give. I have to give Amazon a cut of everything I sell because it's from their platform. So that straight off the bat, I don't get to see all of that. Then I have a cost for ads. I have costs for editors. I have costs for cover designers, all the stuff I've already said. So again, I might see $1 from there, but I'm only $1 in revenue, but I think for my fiction business, it's like 42% margin. So it's a bit better of a margin. But I don't need a huge team for that. It's like me and like just some vendors and like an assistant. That's all we need to run that business. Whereas the No Pants Project, we have 23 people. Might be up to 25 by the time you listen to this. It's a lot of people to take care of and to pay. So people say, well, why do you keep freelancing? Well, because the money's good. Because the money's way better. I get to keep it all when I freelance. And there have been some months where freelancing paid for the bad months of the No Pants Project or of fiction so I'll probably never stop running my freelance business. Now, obviously you can say, well, Mike, you just need to improve your margins and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. And trust me, I'm paying very expensive people to help me with that right now. I'm fully aware of it, but I'm also fully aware that I get to keep 100% of my freelance money. And that's hard to deny. Number 3 is that what I get from freelancing, so one of the reasons I still freelance, are relationships. Now, I recently did a podcast episode where I talked about diva freelancers and how arrogant they are. And I'm going to sound arrogant, and I do apologize. I'm trying not to be a diva freelancer, but I am shocked by the people that I can text on my phone and have a conversation with. Just text them and they'll pick up the phone and we can talk. Now, it's shocking to me because I grew up very poor, both financially and you could say my expectations for myself growing up were very poor. I did not think that I would ever be connected to someone who has, through one of their foundations, fed more than 50 million people, or served 50 million meals to people who need feeding, like to hungry people. That was not, when I was growing up, who I thought I would be hanging out with. Does that make sense? So for me, I still freelance because it's a way to get paid to build relationships with people that I wouldn't normally build relationships with. It has allowed me to raise the level of my network. And they say that your network is your net worth. And it's not all about net worth, but the way that I view it is that I'm hanging out with people who are expanding my mind. For example, I've been to Tom Bilyeu's house. I don't know if you guys know who Tom Bilyeu is. I got to work with him and his wife through one of my other clients. This is what I mean. I got paid to fly down to LA by my client to then spend a day with Tom Bilyeu in his house where he films his Impact Theory show in LA, in the hills of LA, and just to sit and listen to him talk, to be around him, to be surrounded by his just Tom Bilyeu-ness, hanging out with Mel Robbins in her house, getting paid to be there. Hanging out with Peter Diamandis. I remember one time I was driving up to Canada from my house and I had to pull off to the side of the road because Peter Diamandis and his team wanted to have a chat. And Peter was talking about his moonshot theory of thinking. This is stuff that has expanded my mind, and I can't believe I get paid to experience. So there's no real incentive for me to stop freelancing. If that continue, would you stop that? Getting paid a decent amount of money to go do those things, I think it would be insane for you to stop doing that. Now you compare that to my fiction business. I have not had those same experiences from my fiction business. To be frank, I could run my fiction business as a complete hermit and it wouldn't affect my bottom line. I don't have a big network of fiction writers. With the No Pants Project, I get to meet incredible, amazing people from all over the world who are some of my favorite people in the whole world. But, we don't have like a mastermind. So I don't really get to interact with them in the same way. So I like my freelancing business because of the opportunities it has provided me. And another thing, in the No Pants Project, because I'm taking on more of a sort of coach and leader role in that business, it's up to me to provide those experiences. In my freelancing business, my clients provide those experiences. Does that make sense? So it's a subtle difference, but in terms of the end benefit to me, I like when somebody else is figuring out how to do those experiences. Let me give you another example. One of my clients paid for me to go meet with a guy named Joseph McClendon. I had not flown on an airplane in 10 years because of something that had happened. 10 years I just refused to fly on an airplane. Well, this particular client was like, I need you to fly on an airplane for this thing to work out. I had to go down to their office and stuff. And he paid, I don't know if it was he called in favors or what, but Joseph McClendon is Tony Robbins' right-hand man. And Joseph McClendon spent not a few minutes with me, a whole entire day, probably worth about $30,000 to $50,000. A whole day, and went through this whole hypnosis thing, and I've been able to fly no problem ever since. I didn't have to pay anything for that. I got paid to be there. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about when I say part of the reason that I keep freelancing is because of the relationships and the connections. So again, like people can criticize me all that they want about my coaching business or my fiction business or whatever, but freelancing is like my favorite thing. I get a lot more out of freelancing than I do out of these other businesses. Okay, number 4 is part of that is also that I get to learn new things on someone else's dime that I can then go apply to my own business. For example, For 10 years, for 10 years, I have worked in businesses of coaches selling their stuff online. A lot of my clients have been coaches. So when I went to launch my own No Pants project, I didn't have to do what a lot of people do when they launch their coaching business, where they have to learn what is a funnel, how do I write an email, how do I create a webinar. I had for 10 years been paid by clients to go learn that stuff on their dime, to build their funnels, to write their emails, to see how it worked, to get the feedback. So when we launched the No Pants project like 2 years ago, we went from zero to like $60,000 a month or something like that in about 6 weeks. I did a case study for Ryan Lee where we broke down how we made $100,000 in about 8 weeks from scratch, 0 to 8 weeks, $100,000. Those of you who have purchased my Expert Maker program, which we no longer sell, but we used to, you saw then me replicating that process with a brand new product. I can't remember, I think we did it 6 weeks as well. And we ended up generating, I can't even remember, it's like $114,000 or something. I'm not smarter than the average person. I'm not. I just built a business where other people would put me in scenarios, situations, and give me access to resources that I could get firsthand real life experience. And then when I turned around and built my own business, it was just like I was doing client work. And so I will continue to freelance because I like when other people pay for me to learn that stuff. Otherwise, it's very expensive to learn yourself. You gotta front the ads, there's just so much stuff that you have to test and learn. It's just easier when a client pays you for it. All right, number 5, and this is getting a little personal, and I feel like this is a podcast episode where I'm just talking about myself. I hope that this has served you, that the point is not just to like put myself on a pedestal, but to actually give you some insights into why freelancing is something that's worth building and keeping, regardless of whether you do other things. It's also why in the No Pants Project, I'm so obsessed with making sure that you find balance in your freelancing business, because I love freelancing, but I also don't want to just freelance. There are other things I want to do. I enjoy the No Pants Project. I enjoy connecting with our students. The other day, it's been a while since I connected with our students, and I realized I was like really missing hanging out with everybody. I love that part of that business. My fiction, I love writing fiction. I love it. It's so fun. It's one of the funnest things ever. But like I said before, I'm not going to rely on either of those as income sources. So I'm going to keep my fiction, my freelancing. I get all these awesome benefits, and I'm going to keep doing it that way. All right. Number 5 is I actually prefer to be the man behind the scenes. I do. The biggest struggle for me and the No Pants Project has been that I have to put my face on stuff. And that's not false modesty. I actually hate it. I really, really don't like it. I don't like even that I'm making these podcast episodes, that people are listening to Mike Shreeve. I wish I was smart enough to put together like a podcasting team and just be the guy behind the scenes who delivers, this really cool show that people listen to. And, I like the producer role. I like being behind the scenes. I like that. Most of my clients are the talent, and they just, they're the ones who get in front of the camera, and I'm behind it, and I'm working on the back end and helping them to, monetize what it is they do. I love that. My fiction, I will never publish it under my own name. If I could have figured out how to do the No Pants Project without my own name, I would have done that as well. I just am a private person. And freelancing allows me the opportunity to be what for me is my sweet spot. And a lot of mindset people will say, you know what? You need to embrace the spotlight and you need to da-da-da. I don't think so. I think that that what you need to embrace is your sweet spot, and to embrace where you are most in your flow, where you are in your highest contribution. So I don't know how you'd say that, where you are in a state and in action and in flow that is contributing the the most that you can as a human being. And for me, that's being the guy behind the scenes. When I help someone like a Tom Bilyeu, let's say, for example, Tom influences hundreds of thousands of people. Some of his videos have reached millions of views. I like that I could go into his business with a few tweaks, and the end result of those tweaks is projected on hundreds of thousands of people. That is interesting to me. And it sure beats having to be what we call in the biz the talent, the person out front. And so that's why I really, really like the freelancing aspect of things. So really quick recap. Hopefully this has been helpful. I'm nervous that people are going to take this as, oh, there's Mike just bragging about all this stuff. That's not the intention here at all. I hope that you can see, though, one, the thought process required to juggle multiple income streams. I know a lot of you want to have multiple businesses. Hopefully you can see how I've positioned those for those of you who are interested in having multiple income streams. But also, hopefully I've been fairly transparent in terms of the pros and cons and why I really, honestly, truly do think that freelancing is the best way to make money for 99% of the people who want to start their own business. There's a reason I don't have a how to sell fiction course. I think for most people it's not a good idea. Not until they have other stuff taken care of. We did the Expert Maker course one time, and I loved doing it. It was super fun, but you don't see me out there selling courses on how to make courses, right? It's in my opinion, freelancing is the best way to make a full-time income. So really quick recap, it's safe, margins are better, relationships and connections, you learn on someone else's dime, and it's fun to be the guy behind the scenes. So that's it for me, my dear friends. I will see you in the next episode.